So let's go into it, peoples. Let's go into it today. Obviously, you got one of the biggest stories is Charlie Kirk, political pundit, a commentator, affiliated with the right wing and Donald Trump, and one of the biggest right wing pundits, was shot and assassinated at one of his conventions where he usually debates people at university campuses and so forth. And yeah, he was shot and killed essentially. So that's one of the biggest stories right now. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop straight into it. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's been covered so much.
Gang violence. Great.
Yeah, shit, that's graphic. So let me try to find a safer video that won't get us cancelled, because that one was, you're going to see the bullet going through and the blood spurt everywhere, you understand? So let's try to find one which is a bit more censored, a bit more
That's a lot of people.
Twitch, you understand? Twitch ready.
We're going to be here for a couple hours. Get comfortable. Bring the best libs that Utah has to offer.
I think the irony of this as well is right before he was assassinated, he was being questioned on mass shootings and essentially questions around gun control. And obviously, he's pro Second Amendment and pro arms, and also probably likely the assassination was due to his affiliation with Donald Trump, due to essentially a lot of the right-wing pundits right now are kind of just propaganda machines, right-wing propaganda machines for people like Trump right now. They're putting money within these independent bodies outside of Fox News and the traditional legacy media. So obviously people see that, and even though there's videos of him coming out and being a bit more critical of Israel, in general his general position was anti-Palestinian and pro-Israel. And in the context of what's going on right now in the world, obviously the UN, courts, the ICC and the ICJ, so these are the highest courts in the world, have ruled that Israel's committing genocide. What's it called again? There's war crimes being committed, and on top of that, there's been ethnic cleansing, and even prior to all of these, they'd already ruled on apartheid. And the significance of the UN voting on this is because, one, the UN was originally set up was originally called the League of Nations, and it was set up post-World War II, post-World War One, by essentially Western powers like America. So with that being said, the people with the most veto power is America, is a lot of the Western nations. Now, as the years have gone on, and even though it's meant to be a global body, but it served mostly the interests of Western powers, you've seen more other countries that are part of the UN have their voice being valued more and heard. So we're at a state now where a lot of all the groups within NATO, even though it is a group that kind of has a bias towards Western powers, in spite of that, even them are saying, but partially because of the increased role of other countries as well, it's particularly in the global south within the UN, but even in spite of that, they're saying, listen, all these countries around the world, we've come together and we've evaluated what's going on, and by international law, this is dictionary textbook genocide. And a lot of people don't understand what genocide is in relation to international law, so I'll explain it. Genocide in relation to international law is a preventative law. So it's about intent. It's not about the amount of people that are killed. And there's a particular reason for this, because you had the Holocaust, right? And 6 million Jews, between 3 million and 6 million Jews were killed. And obviously, there was a previous genocide before that. You had the Armenian genocide, but it was the Holocaust that presented the whole concept of genocide to the international community. You have the Nuremberg trials and so forth, and people said never again. We don't want this to happen again. So they made international law, and the whole purpose of the law is to prevent the genocide. So if the intent can be proven that you wanted to ethnically cleanse a people through displacement, preventing births, through basically, because people don't realize there was a lot leading up to the Holocaust of the Jews within Germany. It didn't just happen with gas chambers, but it was a gradual thing, and that intent was there for a while. So based off the Holocaust, they made this law. Now skip forward to the 90s, and you can see there's now a double standard. Why is there a double standard? Well, because there is another ethnic cleansing and another genocide that happens, but in the global south, in Africa. You have Rwanda. And people said never again. Now, what you have to remember about Rwanda is that the time before the genocide kicked off, you had the UN there, UN peacekeeping troops, you had American troops there, you had also French and I think Belgium troops over there, but you might have to verify those troops. Remember, Rwanda is a former, I believe, German colony, and a lot of the ethnic tensions had been stoked up by the colonial powers, essentially. The ethnicities weren't really a thing. It was more so to do with clanship and property. Yes, those divisions were there, but it wasn't really an ethnic thing. It was more so to do with who was settled, who was the elite, and who owned cattle. And those were the Tutsis, and those that weren't were the Hutu. But it was a bit more fluid. But these became more distinct along ethnic lines, obviously, when the Germans arrived. Now, fast forward, this boils over. You have all these European and international bodies there, and what do when the Hutu start ethnically cleansing the Tutsi? All the European powers, the same ones that said never again, the UN peacekeeping troopers, their priority was to protect Westerners and get them out of the country. And not only did they help them get out of the country and said we're not helping any of Rwandans, but on top of that, some of these same powers, after they got their people out of the country, then funded different sides of the conflict, like the French, like Belgium. So post-war, basically Rwanda said, yo, you guys said you have this international law saying never again, but it happened again. So that's why in this context, the international law around genocide is preventative. You can't wait till all the people have been killed to say it's a genocide. The whole purpose of the law is to prove intent, because you don't want another Holocaust and we don't want another situation in Rwanda. And these were some of the biggest incidents that was brought to the international court. So he's pro-Israel in spite of there's a current genocide going on, if that makes sense. So the only reason I really had to explain that is because, one, a lot of people don't understand the concept of genocide, and two, people don't understand the gratification of where people stand on, because the genocide means you're ethnically cleansing, you're killing a group of people, and the genocide's ongoing now. So yeah, he was assassinated, and most likely was either based off him being affiliated with Israel, or him being affiliated with Trump, or him being a right-wing pundit. These are the three most likely reasons why he was assassinated, which means it was a political assassination, essentially. But remember, America's in a very divisive place, and it's very bipartisan. So yeah, we're going to hop back into this, but that was my 2 cents, essentially, on when we're trying to conceptualize why someone might do this, right? You have to understand the different political motivations, and this isn't a justification, but it's understanding the incentives that will motivate someone to do something like this, essentially. So yeah, he was a very big commentator, and his in particular, I would say also he was young, so he's about the same age as me, I believe, 27. But it was because as a right-wing pundit, remember the Republicans traditionally get a lot of the older supporters, but he was tapping into a younger audience, you understand? So that's also another potential incentive for anyone that potentially is anti-Israel. And remember, anti-Israel isn't just pro-Palestinian people, but you also have people on the right, usually driven more so by anti-Semitism, but also anti-Israel. So there could be a plethora of reasons why that. Probably also the fact that he's affiliated with Trump, and a lot of people don't like Trump for various reasons. And also the fact that he had a lot of his right-wing talking points, whether it be to do with race, whether it be to do with crime, whether it be to do with abortion, whether it be to do with certain people's rights. And yeah, a lot of people didn't like the way he was talking. This does not justify the killing. He was, at the end of the day, in spite of, he has a right to freedom of speech, in spite of whether you agree with him or not. Not to say that his words don't have impacts, but at the end of the day, places like America have protocols to enable these things to happen, and also these things to be challenged, you understand? So with that being said, if you don't like what he said, there is protocols where you can challenge him, you understand? And there's protocols where you can also go out and say, and this is not a privilege that's afforded in a lot of different countries. So there's no justification for why you should take another person's life just because of what they're saying, when it doesn't, even if you feel like it's infringing on your rights, it's not directly, it's not a direct assault. He's just exercising his freedom of speech, and you are supposed to use your freedom of speech to challenge anything that you don't necessarily agree with. But at the end of the day, we also have to be realistic. The place America is right now, and the place by extension of that, any NATO or any Western nation is very divided, and a lot of it's due to socio-economic issues. In summary, I say the Roman Empire's fallen, Rome's done, and that's when you start to see a lot of the how to say, false narratives and mythology that holds these nations up together fall apart, and it's kind of left with the reality, which is a lot of these countries are very divided, and a lot of the economic issues, and in particular these global conflicts that we're engaging in, are only going to cause these divisions to get worse. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it, because I want to move on from this is a big story, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. You've probably seen it on Instagram as well. I posted it, but yeah, he got shot in the neck. Right now, they don't know who the shooter is. They've arrested an old guy, an old white dude, but some images were released of another man, and they're saying potentially, they don't know who the shooter is, but potentially it might be this guy. If I go on my Instagram.
The region, even globally. How are Qatari affected?
Not counting gang violence. Great. Right.
I can.
If you're in France today,
Alright, so we're on the Frontline Media, Instagram. You can see this is the aftermath of the shooting. So it's very chaotic.
oh my gosh!
He was a big commentator on Turning Point USA. One of the co-founders as well. And this happened at Utah Valley University. Yeah, he's dead. Anyone that's seen the video, there isn't much.
Oh my gosh!
Rest in peace. Like I said, irregardless how you feel about it, no one deserves to lose their life over exercising their right to freedom of expression. But at the end of the day, you have to be honest. We have to be honest with the state of America, the state of the West. It's very divided. You have to be honest about, he's a person in a position of power, so his words do hold weight and do have influence and impact. And to that powerless people, he's an easy target. And remember, America is a place where there is a lot of firearms. So you can take action on things you don't feel happy about. And remember, that is also a lot of conflict is essentially when the talking stops. You know, it's a battle between ideologies. You understand? It's almost like a physical form of debate war. You understand? So when the talking stops, the shooting starts. You understand? So that's where I think the West is and a place, and especially America's at right now. Not everyone wants to challenge people in positions of power, to be frank. I think it's at a state now where people are trying to take him out because they feel like it's not working, essentially. They feel either these people are too powerful and have too much influence for us to have a significant impact. So we're just going to use our Second Amendment instead of, I believe, freedom of expression is the First Amendment. I'm not too sure. I need to double check. But instead of using the amendments that protect freedom of expression, we're going to use our Second Amendment to get what we want. And if you're being honest, remember, how did the Americans get their independence from the British? So we have to understand that there is a fundamental contradiction within the Constitution where it provides two opportunities to get what you want. And if we look at the honest history of America, America is not Britain. It's not these other places where, yes, Britain is a bad mind person. Don't get it twisted. But what Britain does is play chess. And what I mean by that is they will throw you in a war, but they already have all the info on you. And when they're about to win the war, that's when they'll force you into diplomacy. So even though there was no chance of you winning this war, they made you sign contracts and so forth, pretend like this war was ended through a fair agreement, even though they had all the leverage, you understand? And most of American history, it wasn't solved through diplomacy, it was solved through the war to the end, you understand? So the way I'm looking at this is the people that are responsible for these actions, this is probably their incentives. They probably, it's not a thing of they want to chat. It's not a thing of they want to use freedom of expression. It's a thing of they probably want to challenge the whole existing status quo. And if that means conflict, if that means sparking that, then that's so. Whether it's people involved within the institution or outside of it, someone's trying to start something, in my opinion. And yeah, they're doing it through direct violence, not through talking. So this is a state we have to be very wary of as commentators, as people that work in the media, as journalists. Remember, our job is dangerous. Despite the fact that we have the right to freedom of expression, doesn't mean it's guaranteed. You have to fight for your rights. So you have to remember that media does have influence and power, and to the powerless, especially those that feel that their only power is not within their voice, but within their violence, you are a target, especially in these times. So we have to be careful. But yeah, man, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. This is the state of the world right now, so everyone has to be very vigilant and cautious of how they report and cover their stories and how they interact with the media nowadays, because in this information society, that information can be used against you. But yeah, man, without further ado, let's move on to the next one, man.